She was sold before she ever knew the price. Arya Moretti learned too young that being a crime lord's illegitimate daughter meant wearing a target disguised as a designer gown. Tonight, at Manhattan's most exclusive charity gala, she would discover that some men see vulnerability as invitation, and others see it as something worth claiming. What happened next would shatter alliances, ignite a war between empires, and transform an unwanted daughter into the most dangerous woman in the city. If you stay with me until the end, hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far Arya's story reaches across the world. The Sinclair Ballroom glittered like a jewelry box designed to showcase its contents, and Arya Moretti knew exactly which category she fell into. Not the diamonds, not even the pearls. She was the cubic zirconia tucked in the back corner, acknowledged only when someone needed to point out the difference between real and fake. She stood near the marble columns at the edge of the dance floor, champagne flute balanced between fingers that had learned to look graceful even when they trembled. The dress she wore, midnight blue silk that cost more than most people's monthly rent, had been delivered to her apartment that morning with a note in her father's handwriting. Look presentable. The Morettis have a reputation to maintain. Arya had laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that echoed in her empty kitchen. The Morettis had a reputation, certainly. Leon Moretti had built an empire on fear, loyalty, and the kind of ruthless efficiency that turned whispered names into legends. His legitimate children, Marcus and Isabella, stood across the ballroom now, surrounded by admirers, secure in their birthright. They wore the family name like armor. Arya wore it like a scar. Still hiding in corners, sweetheart? The voice slithered across her shoulder before she saw the face. Richard Castellano, married to a senator's daughter, father of 3, hands that wandered wherever his wife wasn't looking. You know, for someone who looks like that, you spend an awful lot of time pretending to be invisible. Arya didn't turn. She'd learned that eye contact was invitation to men like Richard. I'm not hiding. I'm observing. Observing what? He moved closer. She could smell his cologne, expensive, cloying. All these people pretending you belong here? The words landed exactly where he'd aimed them. Arya's fingers tightened around the champagne flute. Everyone knows what you are, Arya. Richard's voice dropped lower, intimate in the way that made her skin crawl. Leon's little mistake, pretty enough to keep around, not legitimate enough to matter. There's a word for women in your position. There's a word for married men who corner young women at charity galas, Arya said, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. Multiple words, actually. None of them flattering. Richard's smile sharpened. Careful. You don't have the protection you think you do. Your father might claim you at events like this, but we both know he wouldn't lift a finger if something unfortunate happened to you. The truth of it was a knife between her ribs. Leon Moretti acknowledged her existence, barely. He paid for her apartment, sent her clothes for occasions like this, included her name on the family roster when appearances demanded it. But protection? Real protection, the kind that came with being a Moretti who mattered? She'd stopped believing in that years ago. Touch me and find out, Arya said quietly. Richard laughed. Such fire. I wonder if... The ballroom doors opened. Not the casual opening of guests arriving fashionably late, but the kind of entrance that pulled oxygen from the room. Conversations stuttered, heads turned. The string quartet faltered for half a measure before recovering. Matteo Vitale stood in the doorway. Arya had never seen him in person before, only in photographs that didn't quite capture the presence of him. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 30, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on Roman coins, sharp cheekbones, jaw that could cut glass, eyes so dark they looked black under the crystal chandeliers. But it wasn't his looks that made the room hold its breath. It was the power that radiated from him like heat from a furnace. The absolute certainty in the way he moved, the way he existed in space. Matteo Vitale didn't ask for permission or attention. He commanded it simply by breathing. The Vitale family controlled the ports, shipping, imports, exports. Anything that moved through New York Harbor moved through Vitale territory. Matteo had inherited the empire 3 years ago when his father died, and in that time, he doubled their holdings and tripled their influence. He was Leon Moretti's strongest rival, and he was walking straight toward her. Arya's heart stopped. Richard Castellano stepped back so quickly he nearly knocked over a passing waiter. The crowd parted like water, faces turning to track Mateo's path across the marble floor. His security detail, two men built like brick walls, remained by the entrance, but their eyes tracked every movement in the room. Mateo's gaze never wavered. Those black eyes locked onto Arya with the precision of a predator identifying prey, or a king identifying his queen. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the threads of gold in his dark eyes, the faint scar along his jawline, the absolute lack of hesitation in his expression. Arya Moretti. His voice was deep, textured like smoke and whiskey. Not a question, a statement of fact. She should say something, anything. Her mind raced through options, polite greeting, casual deflection, icy dismissal, but her voice had abandoned her completely. Mateo extended his hand, not in greeting, in command. Dance with me. 3 words that weren't a request. The ballroom had gone completely silent. Every eye in the room tracked this moment. The Vitale heir approaching Leon Moretti's illegitimate daughter at a charity gala like she was someone who mattered, like she was someone worth claiming in front of every powerful family in the city. Arya's mind screamed warnings. Dancing with Matteo Vitale would be a statement, a declaration. It would put a target on her back brighter than anything Richard Castellano's wandering hands could create. But her hand was already moving. Her fingers slipped into his palm, and the contact sent electricity racing up her arm. His hand was warm, calloused, strong enough to break her bones, but gentle enough that she felt, for the first time in longer than she could remember, safe. He led her to the center of the dance floor. The orchestra, reading the room with practiced expertise, began a waltz. Slow, intimate, the kind of dance that required proximity. Mateo's hand settled on her waist, and Arya stopped breathing. "You're afraid," he said quietly, not mocking, observing. "You're Matteo Vitale." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Walking over here was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. It was neither. His thumb traced a small circle against her waist, the touch burning through the silk of her dress. It was inevitable. They moved together, and Arya discovered that Matteo danced the way he walked, with absolute confidence, leading her through the steps as if they'd done this 1,000 times before. The room spun around them, faces blurring into a kaleidoscope of shock and speculation. "Why?" Arya asked. "Why what? Why me? Why here? Why now?" She looked up at him, searching those dark eyes for answers. "We've never met. You don't know me." Matteo's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I know you better than you think. That's not an answer. I know you stand alone at events like this because your father is too proud to claim you fully and too calculating to disown you completely." His voice dropped lower, meant only for her. "I know Richard Castellano has cornered you 3 times in the last month, and you've handled it yourself because asking for protection would require admitting you need it. I know Marcus and Isabella pretend you don't exist unless cameras are present, and that your mother died when you were 16, leaving you without allies in a world that views you as leverage." Arya stumbled. Matteo's arm tightened, keeping her upright, keeping her close. "How do you—" "I've been watching you for 6 months, Arya Moretti." The words should have terrified her. Instead, they felt like revelation. While everyone else saw Leon's embarrassment, I saw strength. While they saw a scandal to exploit, I saw a queen waiting for someone to give her a crown. Her breath caught. "I'm not—" "Yes, you are." His hand slid from her waist to the small of her back, pulling her closer until there was barely space between them. "You survive in a world designed to break you. You endure humiliation with grace. You stand alone in rooms full of predators and refuse to bow. That's not strength," Arya whispered. "That's just existing." "Existing is what prey does." Matteo's eyes burned into hers. "What you do is something else entirely." The music swelled around them. They turned, and Arya caught glimpses of faces she recognized. Her father, standing near the bar, with an expression carved from ice. Marcus and Isabella watching with identical looks of confusion and calculation. Richard Castellano, pale and sweating near the refreshment table. And dozens of others, families who controlled territories, ran operations, built empires on blood and secrets, all of them watching this dance like it was a declaration of war. You're making a statement, Arya said. Yes. You're putting me in danger. No. Mateo's voice turned sharp. I'm ending the danger you've been in since the day Leon first brought you to one of these events. I'm making you untouchable. By dancing with me? By claiming you. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Arya's pulse thundered in her ears. You can't just watch me. Mateo stopped moving. They stood in the center of the dance floor, the music continuing around them, every eye in the ballroom locked on this moment. He reached up, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and Arya forgot how to breathe. You're mine, Arya Moretti. The declaration echoed across the silent ballroom. I know. His hand cupped her jaw. You don't know me. You don't trust me. You think this is a game or a trick or another man trying to use you for his own purposes. Isn't it? No. The certainty in his voice was absolute. I'm the man who's going to give you everything they've denied you. Power, protection, a place where you're not tolerated, you're treasured. Arya's heart hammered against her ribs. Why? Because I watched you stand alone for 6 months, and I realized something. Mateo leaned closer, his lips nearly brushing her temple. Queens shouldn't stand alone. They should have kingdoms. Before she could process his words, before she could question or protest or pull away, Mateo kissed her. The ballroom erupted, not with applause, with shock that rippled outward like shockwaves, gasps, whispers that grew into conversations, the careful social order of Manhattan's criminal elite fracturing in real time. But Arya heard none of it. Mateo's lips were firm against hers, demanding without force, claiming without violence. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back, and Arya felt something inside her crack open, something that had been locked away for so long she'd forgotten it existed. Want. Real want. Not the desperate need for approval or the hollow ache of loneliness, but genuine desire that burned through her veins like wildfire. When he pulled back, Arya's lips were swollen, her breathing unsteady, her world completely upended. Mateo's thumb traced her lower lip. That, he said quietly, is what claiming you looks like. Around them, the ballroom had descended into barely controlled chaos. Arya caught glimpses of reactions, her father's face turning purple with rage, Isabella's expression caught between horror and calculation, men who'd looked at her like prey now backing away as if she'd become something venomous. You just started a war, Arya breathed. No. Mateo's smile was sharp enough to cut. I just ended several. He released her slowly, stepping back but keeping his eyes locked on hers. Then, loud enough for the entire room to hear, he spoke. Arya Moretti is under my protection, effective immediately. Anyone who touches her, threatens her, or disrespects her answers to me. His gaze swept across the ballroom, landing on faces that paled under the weight of his attention. And I don't show mercy. The message was crystal clear. Arya had gone from illegitimate daughter to protected asset in the span of a single dance. But Mateo wasn't finished. He turned to where Leon Moretti stood, his expression unreadable. We should talk. Tonight. Your office or mine? Leon's jaw worked. For a long moment, Arya thought he might refuse, might explode in front of everyone. Instead, he gave a single, curt nod. Mateo turned back to Arya. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that felt more intimate than the one they'd shared in front of hundreds of witnesses. I'll see you soon, Arya. Then he was gone, striding across the ballroom with the same confidence he'd arrived with, his security detail falling into step behind him. The doors closed and the spell broke. Conversation exploded around her. Arya stood alone in the center of the dance floor, her skin still burning where Mateo had touched her, her mind reeling from everything that had just happened. She'd come to this gala as Leon Moretti's unwanted daughter, a scandal in a designer dress, tolerated but not treasured, visible but not valued. She was leaving as something else entirely. 2 hours later, Arya sat in the back of a car service, still wearing the midnight blue gown, still feeling Mateo's hands on her waist, his lips against hers, his words echoing in her mind. You're mine. Her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. Tomorrow. 2 p.m. Il Giardino. We have things to discuss. MV Aria stared at the screen until it went dark, her reflection ghostly in the glass. She should be terrified. She should be planning how to extricate herself from whatever game Matteo Vitale was playing. She should be worried about the consequences, the backlash, the danger. Instead, for the first time in her life, Aria Moretti felt something she'd never felt before. Powerful. Il Giardino occupied the top floor of a building Matteo owned in Tribeca. Exclusive, expensive, and completely private. Aria arrived at 1:55 p.m., dressed in a charcoal suit that felt like armor, her dark hair pulled back in a way that said professional instead of prey. The maitre d' recognized her immediately. "Ms. Moretti, Mr. Vitale is expecting you." He led her through the main dining room, currently empty, the restaurant not open for service, to a private room overlooking the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Manhattan that made Aria feel like she was standing on top of the world. Matteo stood near the window, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He turned when she entered, and the impact of his attention was like being hit with a spotlight. "You came." "You didn't really give me a choice." Aria's voice came out steady. "That text wasn't a request." "No," Matteo agreed. "It wasn't." He gestured to a table set for two. White linen, crystal glasses, a bottle of wine already breathing. "Sit. We have a lot to discuss." Aria considered refusing, considered turning around and walking out, consequences be damned. Instead, she crossed the room and sat, keeping her spine straight, her expression neutral. Matteo poured wine with the ease of someone comfortable with expensive things. He handed her a glass, then took the seat across from her. "You're angry," he observed. "You kissed me in front of every powerful family in New York." Aria set the glass down without drinking. "You claimed me like I was property. You told my father we needed to talk. So yes, I'm angry." "Good." Matteo's lips curved. "Anger is better than fear. I'm not afraid of you. I know." He leaned back in his chair, studying her with those dark, penetrating eyes. "That's one of the reasons I chose you." "Chose me?" Aria laughed, the sound bitter. "Like I'm a suit you picked off a rack." "No." Matteo's voice turned serious. "Like you're the queen I've been waiting for." There was that word again. Queen. It should sound ridiculous coming from a man she'd met less than 24 hours ago. Instead, it sounded like promise. "I don't understand what you want from me," Aria said quietly. Matteo was silent for a long moment, his gaze never leaving hers. Then he spoke, and his words changed everything. "Marry me." Aria stared at him. "What?" "Marry me, Aria Moretti." Matteo's voice was calm, measured, like he was discussing business terms instead of proposing. "Be my wife, my partner, my equal." "You're insane." "I'm practical." He took a sip of wine. "You need protection, power, and a position that makes you untouchable. I need—" "A trophy wife?" Aria interrupted. "Someone to warm your bed and look pretty at events?" Matteo's eyes flashed. "I need someone strong enough to stand beside me. Someone intelligent enough to see opportunities before they become obvious. Someone ruthless enough to make hard decisions when necessary." He paused. "I need a queen, Aria. And you need a kingdom. I don't even know you." "You know enough." Matteo set down his glass. "You know I'm powerful enough to protect you from every man in that ballroom last night. You know I'm wealthy enough to give you anything you want. You know I'm ruthless enough to destroy anyone who threatens what's mine." "And what do you know about me?" Aria challenged. "Really know, beyond what you've observed from a distance?" Matteo stood, moving around the table with predatory grace. He stopped beside her chair, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "I know you're brilliant," he said quietly. "Fluent in 4 languages. Graduated Columbia with honors in international relations. Your father wanted you to work for him, but you refused because you knew he'd use you and discard you the moment it became convenient." Aria's breath caught. "I know you volunteer at a women's shelter in Brooklyn under a fake name because you understand what it's like to feel trapped with nowhere to go." Matteo's hand came up, fingers tracing the line of her jaw. "I know you're strong enough to survive in a world that's tried to break you, and smart enough to recognize an opportunity when it's offered." This isn't an opportunity, Arya whispered. This is insanity. This is survival. Mateo's thumb brushed her lower lip. Marry me, and you'll never stand alone again. You'll never be the unwanted daughter, the scandal, the woman men like Richard Castellano think they can corner. You'll be Arya Vitale, my wife, my queen. The words painted a picture so seductive it hurt. Arya closed her eyes, trying to think past the heat of his touch, the pull of his presence. Why me? She asked again. You could marry anyone, someone legitimate, someone without the baggage I carry. Because I don't want someone legitimate. Mateo's voice was fierce. I want someone who understands what it means to fight for every scrap of respect. I want someone who's been underestimated their entire life and used it as armor. I want you, Arya. She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. What if I say no? Then I'll respect your decision. Mateo stepped back, giving her space. But you'll go back to standing alone at galas while men like Richard circle you like sharks. You'll go back to being tolerated instead of treasured. And eventually your father will use you as a bargaining chip in some deal that serves him and destroys you. The truth of it settled in her stomach like lead. If I say yes, Arya said carefully, what exactly are you offering? Mateo returned to his seat. Partnership. Real partnership. Not the facade most marriages in our world become. You'll have access to everything I have, resources, connections, protection. You'll sit in on meetings, contribute to decisions, build your own influence within the organization. And in return, you stand beside me. You use that brilliant mind to help me expand our territory. You become the face of the Vitale family at events and negotiations where a woman's presence provides advantage. He paused. And you share my bed. Heat flooded Arya's cheeks. Romantic. I'm not offering romance, Mateo said bluntly. I'm offering respect, trust, protection, partnership. Romance is a luxury people in our world can't afford. And if I develop feelings? The question felt vulnerable, dangerous. Mateo's expression softened infinitesimally. Then I'd consider myself fortunate. Arya picked up her wine glass, taking a long sip to buy herself time to think. Her mind raced through implications, consequences, possibilities. Marrying Mateo Vitale would change everything. She'd go from invisible to impossible to ignore, from scandal to power, from prey to predator. But it would also put her at the center of her father's attention in ways she'd spent years avoiding. It would make her a target for anyone who wanted to strike at Mateo. It would tie her fate to a man she'd known for less than a day. I need time, she said finally. You have until tonight. Arya's eyes snapped to his. That's not enough. Your father is planning something. Mateo's voice turned serious. I met with him last night after the gala. He was evasive, which means he's making moves he doesn't want me to know about. Moves that likely involve you. Cold dread pooled in Arya's stomach. What kind of moves? I don't know yet, but I have people looking into it. Mateo leaned forward. Which is why I need your answer tonight, Arya. Because whatever Leon is planning, it's happening soon. And I can only protect you if you're mine. There was that word again. Mine. Arya stood, needing distance, needing air. She walked to the window, staring out at the city spread below. Somewhere down there, her father was making decisions about her future, using her as leverage, planning her life like she was a chess piece instead of a person. If I marry you, she said without turning around, I want something in writing, legal protection, assets in my name, a way out if this becomes unbearable, Mateo finished. She heard him stand, felt him approach. Done. My lawyers will draw up a contract that protects you financially and legally. If you want to leave, you'll have the resources to disappear. Arya turned. Why would you agree to that? Because I meant what I said about partnership. Mateo's eyes were steady. I'm not trying to trap you, Arya. I'm trying to free you. The words hit her like a physical blow. Freedom. Real freedom. Not the hollow independence of her current life where she was alone but never safe, visible but never protected. I need to think, she said. Then think. Mateo pulled a card from his pocket, pressing it into her hand. My private number. Call me by 8 tonight with your answer. Arya looked down at the card, heavy stock, embossed lettering, the kind of quality that spoke of power. And if I say no? She asked. Mateo's expression was unreadable. Then I'll respect your decision, but I'll also watch as your father uses you in whatever scheme he's planning. And I'll remember that I offered you a way out. He walked to the door, then paused, looking back at her. You deserve more than what they've given you, Arya. You deserve to be seen, valued, protected, cherished. His voice dropped. Let me give you that. Then he was gone, leaving Arya alone with a view of the city and a decision that would change her life forever. Arya returned to her apartment in a daze, Mateo's card burning a hole in her pocket. The penthouse her father paid for, a gilded cage on the Upper East Side, felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in as she paced from window to window, watching the city move below without really seeing it. Marry me. The words echoed in her mind, impossible to ignore, impossible to fully process. She'd been proposed to before, twice, actually. Once by a business associate of her father's who was 63 and looking for a young wife to parade around. Once by a man who'd seemed genuine until she discovered he wanted access to Moretti connections more than he wanted her. But Mateo's proposal was different. Transactional, yes, but honest about it. He wasn't pretending to love her. He wasn't offering fairy tales or romance. He was offering partnership, protection, and power. Everything she'd never had. Her phone buzzed. A text from Isabella. Father wants to see you. His office. Now. Arya's stomach dropped. Leon Moretti never summoned her to his office. Their interactions were limited to public events where appearances demanded her presence and monthly deposits into her bank account that felt more like hush money than support. She changed quickly, trading the charcoal suit for dark jeans and a black sweater, armor of a different kind. The drive to her father's estate in Westchester took 40 minutes, giving her plenty of time to imagine worst-case scenarios. By the time she arrived, her hands were steady, but her pulse was racing. The Moretti compound sprawled across 15 acres of manicured lawns and old-growth trees. The main house was a monument to wealth acquired through generations of carefully managed criminal enterprise. Stone and glass and enough security to repel a small army. Arya had only been here a handful of times. It had never felt like home. Marcus met her at the door, his expression carefully neutral. Her half-brother was 32, handsome in a conventional way, and utterly devoted to maintaining the Moretti legacy. He looked at Arya the way one might look at a stain on expensive upholstery, visible, unfortunate, and preferably ignored. He's waiting in his office, Marcus said without preamble. Fair warning, he's furious. About what? Arya asked, though she already knew. Marcus's eyes narrowed. You really have to ask? Matteo Vitale kissed you in front of half the city last night. What the hell were you thinking? I wasn't thinking, Arya said honestly. He didn't exactly ask permission. You should have refused, walked away, made it clear you weren't interested. Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. Do you have any idea what kind of complications you've created? The Vitales are our biggest competitors. Father has been working for months to establish territorial boundaries, and now Matteo publicly claims his daughter? It looks like you're choosing sides. I'm not Leon's daughter when it's convenient for him, Arya shot back. I'm barely acknowledged most of the time. Why does it suddenly matter now? Because perception is everything in our world. Marcus's jaw tightened. And right now perception is that you're Matteo Vitale's woman, which makes you a liability. The word stung more than it should have. Arya pushed past her brother, heading down the hallway she'd walked maybe 3 times in her entire life. The door to Leon's office stood open, and she entered without knocking. Leon Moretti sat behind a desk that probably cost more than most cars. His silver hair immaculately styled, his suit pressed to perfection. At 61, he was still handsome, still commanding, still the kind of man who walked into rooms and expected obedience. He looked up when Arya entered, and his expression was ice. Close the door. She did, then stood in front of his desk, refusing to sit without invitation, refusing to show weakness. Explain yourself, Leon said, his voice dangerously calm. There's nothing to explain. Matteo Vitale asked me to dance. I accepted. He kissed you. He did. In front of the Castellanos, the DeSantis family, the Russos, and every other family with stakes in this city. Leon's hands were flat on the desk, his knuckles white. He claimed you publicly, made a statement, started rumors that will take months to contain. Then maybe you should have claimed me yourself years ago, Arya said quietly. Maybe if you'd actually protected me instead of just tolerating me, men like Richard Castellano wouldn't have thought they could corner me at charity galas. Leon's eyes flashed. What did Richard do? What he always does. What they all do. Arya's voice remained steady. They see an unprotected woman in a world full of predators, and they circle. You know this. You've always known this. You just didn't care enough to stop it. For a moment, something that might have been guilt crossed Leon's face. Then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. Matteo Vitale wants something from you. Men like him don't make public declarations without strategic reasons. He wants me to marry him. The words dropped into the room like a grenade. Leon went absolutely still. What did you say? Matteo proposed. Yesterday. At Il Giardino. Arya watched her father's face carefully. He wants a wife, a partner. He chose me. Leon stood slowly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. And what did you tell him? I told him I needed time to think. The answer is no. Leon's voice was steel. You will refuse. You will cut all contact with Matteo Vitale. You will make it clear that last night was a mistake. Why? Arya challenged. Because it disrupts whatever plans you've made for me. Leon's silence was answer enough. Cold realization washed over Arya. You've already promised me to someone else, haven't you? I've made arrangements that benefit the family, Leon said carefully. Arrangements that have been in negotiation for 3 months. Your involvement with Matteo jeopardizes those arrangements. Who? Arya's voice turned sharp. Who did you promise me to without even telling me? Leon hesitated, and in that hesitation, Arya saw the truth. Her father had sold her, not with her knowledge, not with her consent, but sold her nonetheless. Just another asset to be traded for advantage. Luca DeSantis. The name hit her like a physical blow. Luca DeSantis was the heir to the DeSantis shipping empire, rivals to the Vitales, but smaller, less powerful. He was 42, twice divorced, and had a reputation for cruelty that made even hardened criminals uncomfortable. No, Arya breathed. Absolutely not. It's already done, Leon said. The contracts are drawn. The alliance is set. You'll marry Luca in 6 months. It strengthens our position, gives us access to DeSantis shipping routes, and creates a unified front against Vitale expansion. I'm not marrying Luca DeSantis, Arya's voice shook with rage. I'm not marrying anyone you choose for me like I'm livestock being traded. You're a Moretti, Leon said coldly. You'll do what's best for the family. I'm barely a Moretti according to you. Arya stepped forward, planting her hands on his desk. You've made that clear my entire life. So which is it, Father? Am I family, with all the rights and protections that implies? Or am I the illegitimate daughter you barely acknowledge except when I'm useful? Leon's face darkened. You ungrateful, ungrateful? Arya laughed bitterly. You want gratitude? For what? For paying rent on an apartment so you don't have to look at me? For sending clothes to events so I don't embarrass you? For acknowledging my existence just enough to keep people from asking too many questions about what happened to the woman you got pregnant 24 years ago? Your mother made her choices. My mother died alone while you were at a business dinner, Arya said, her voice breaking. She had a heart attack, and by the time I found her, it was too late. I was 16. You sent flowers to the funeral, flowers. Then you set me up in an apartment and went back to your real family. Leon's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. This conversation is over. You will marry Luca DeSantis. The arrangements are final. Then, unfinalize them. Arya straightened. Because I'm seriously considering Matteo's proposal. And if I accept, there's nothing you can do to stop me. If you marry Matteo Vitale, you're no longer a Moretti. Leon's voice was absolute. I'll disown you, cut you off completely. You'll have nothing. I already have nothing, Arya said quietly. Nothing that matters. Anyway, Matteo's offering me more than you ever have. Respect, protection, partnership. A place where I'm not just tolerated. She turned toward the door, Done with this conversation, done with begging for scraps of affection from a man who'd never wanted her in the first place. Arya. Leon's voice stopped her at the threshold. She looked back. Luca DeSantis is dangerous. More dangerous than you realize. If you reject this arrangement, there will be consequences. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Leon's expression was unreadable. The DeSantis family doesn't take insults lightly. If you embarrass Luca by choosing Matteo, he'll retaliate, and I might not be able to protect you. You've never protected me before, Arya said. Why would I expect you to start now? She walked out of his office, past Marcus, who was lurking in the hallway, through the house that had never been her home, and into the cool afternoon air. Her hands were shaking by the time she reached her car. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Your father's meeting with Luca DeSantis tomorrow at noon. Pier 47. Thought you should know. M.V. Matteo. Of course he had people watching her father. Of course he knew about the DeSantis arrangement before she did. Another text followed. The offer still stands. 8 p.m. Your choice. Arya sat in her car, staring at the messages until the screen went dark. Then she made a decision that would change everything. She called Matteo. He answered on the first ring. Arya. I need to know something, she said without preamble. And I need the truth. Ask. Did you know about Luca DeSantis? Before you approached me at the gala, did you know my father was planning to marry me off? Matteo was silent for a long moment. Yes. The honesty startled her. How long have you known? 6 weeks. One of my people intercepted communications between Leon and Antonio DeSantis. They've been negotiating your marriage as part of a larger territorial agreement, and you decided to interfere. I decided to offer you an alternative. Matteo's voice was steady. What Leon's planning isn't marriage, Arya. It's a transaction that treats you like property. Luca DeSantis has a reputation for how he treats his wives. The first one divorced him after 2 years and won't speak about what happened during their marriage. The second one disappeared 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Ice settled in Arya's stomach. Disappeared? Her body was never found. Officially, she moved to Europe. Unofficially. Matteo paused. She knew too much about DeSantis operations. Became a liability. And my father was going to hand me over to him. Yes. Arya closed her eyes, fighting back the anger threatening to choke her. What else should I know about Luca? He's violent, paranoid. He runs the DeSantis shipping operation with an iron fist, and anyone who crosses him disappears. His father Antonio is equally ruthless but more controlled. Together they've built an empire on intimidation and brutality. Why does my father want an alliance with them? Because the DeSantis family controls routes Leon needs for expansion, and because Antonio promised military support if Leon ever goes to war with me. Matteo's voice turned grim. Your marriage to Luca would seal that alliance, make it unbreakable. So stopping my marriage to Luca benefits you strategically. Yes, Matteo admitted, but that's not why I'm doing this. Then why? Because I meant what I said at Il Giardino. You deserve better than what they're planning for you. Better than being traded like cargo. Better than becoming another woman who disappears when she becomes inconvenient. Arya's throat tightened. I don't know if I can trust you. You can't, Matteo said bluntly. Not yet. Trust is earned, not given. But you can trust that our interests align. I want you safe, powerful, and at my side. That requires treating you as an equal, not a possession. And Luca? Luca wants you silent, obedient, and eventually disappeared when you know too much. That requires treating you as disposable. The choice, laid out so starkly, was almost laughable in its simplicity. Partner or victim. Queen or casualty. I need more time, Arya said. You have until 8 p.m. After that, I'll need to make other plans. Matteo paused. But Arya, whatever you decide, be careful. Luca doesn't react well to rejection. The line went dead. Arya sat in her car outside her father's estate, watching the sun sink lower in the sky, and tried to imagine a future where she married Luca DeSantis. tried to picture herself standing beside a man known for violence and paranoia, sleeping next to someone who'd made his previous wife disappear, living under constant surveillance and control. The image made her sick. Then she tried to imagine a future as Mateo's wife, standing beside him at negotiations, contributing to strategy, building her own power base, being seen as partner instead of property. The image terrified her, but it also thrilled her. Her phone rang. Isabella. What? Arya answered. Father told me about Luca. Isabella's voice was tight. This is insane, even for him. You can't marry that man. Arya blinked. Isabella had never shown concern for her before. Why do you care? Because I'm not a monster, Isabella snapped. I know we're not close. I know I've been cold to you over the years, but Luca DeSantis is dangerous. Father's making a mistake, and you'll pay for it. He's already decided. The contracts are signed. Then break them. Refuse. Run if you have to. Isabella's voice dropped. I know about Mateo's proposal. How? Marcus has sources in Vitale territory. They reported back about your meeting at Il Giardino. Isabella paused. Marry Mateo, Arya. Whatever his reasons for wanting you, at least he won't kill you when you become inconvenient. That's a low bar for marriage. It's our world, Isabella said bitterly. Low bars are all we get. But at least with Mateo, you'd have a chance at something resembling a partnership. With Luca, you'd be lucky to survive the honeymoon. Arya's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Why are you telling me this? Because you're my sister. Isabella's voice cracked slightly. Half-sister technically, but still. And because I've watched Father treat you like you don't matter for 24 years, and I'm tired of pretending it's acceptable. You deserve better. The words hit harder than any argument Mateo had made. Arya's eyes burned with unshed tears. If I marry Mateo, Father will disown me. Probably, Isabella agreed, but you'd be alive. And honestly, being disowned by Leon Moretti might be the best thing that ever happened to you. After Isabella hung up, Arya sat in silence, watching the sky turn from blue to purple to black. At 7:45 p.m., she pulled out Mateo's card and dialed his private number. He answered immediately. Arya, I have conditions. I'm listening. First, I want everything in writing. Prenuptial agreement that protects my assets and gives me a way out if necessary. Legal documentation that ensures I'm a partner, not property. Done. My lawyers will have everything ready by tomorrow. Second, I want autonomy. I'm not decorative. If I'm going to be your wife, I contribute. Strategy, negotiations, operations. I want real involvement, not token participation. That's what I'm offering, Mateo said. I need your skills, Arya, your intelligence, your language abilities, your understanding of how families like ours operate. You'll have as much autonomy as you can handle. Third, Arya continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart, I want protection, not just for me, for the people I care about, the women at the shelter in Brooklyn, the few friends I have who aren't connected to this world. They don't become leverage against me. Agreed. Anyone you designate as protected gets resources and security. No exceptions. Arya took a deep breath. And fourth, I want honesty. No games. No secrets that could get me killed. If we're partners, I need to know what I'm walking into. I'll tell you everything you need to know to stay safe and make informed decisions, Mateo said. But Arya, some secrets exist for protection. There are things I can't share immediately, not because I don't trust you, but because knowing certain information makes you a target. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. More honest than anything her father had ever offered. When would we get married, she asked. 2 weeks. Small ceremony, immediate legal protection, and a very public announcement that makes it clear you're under my protection. 2 weeks, Arya repeated, her mind reeling. That's fast. Luca will move quickly once he hears you've refused him. We need to make you legally untouchable before he can retaliate. Mateo's voice softened slightly. I know this is happening fast. I know you're taking a leap of faith, but I promise you, Arya, I will never treat you the way your father has. You will never be disposable to me. The sincerity in his voice decided her. Yes, Arya said quietly. I'll marry you. Mateo exhaled, and she realized he'd actually been uncertain of her answer. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You're getting a woman with serious family complications and a target on her back. I'm getting a queen, Mateo corrected. Everything else, we'll handle together. Where are you right now? Sitting outside my father's estate. Go home. Pack what matters to you. Tomorrow morning my people will move the rest of your things to my penthouse. Mateo paused. You're not going back to that apartment, Arya. As of tonight, you live with me. We're not married yet. We're engaged. That's close enough in our world. And it sends a clear message. You're mine, and anyone who wants to challenge that answers to me. Possessive words that should have rankled. Instead, they felt like safety. Okay, Arya agreed. I'll go home and pack. Arya? Mateo's voice stopped her before she could hang up. You made the right choice. I hope so, she whispered. I'll make sure of it. The line went dead and Arya sat in the darkness, staring at her father's estate in the rearview mirror. Somewhere in that house, Leon Moretti was planning her future without her consent. Somewhere in the city, Luca DeSantis was expecting to claim her in 6 months. But Arya had just made a different choice. She'd chosen power over obedience, partnership over possession, a man who saw her as a queen over a man who'd see her as a casualty. As she drove back to the city, Arya's phone buzzed with incoming texts. Her father. We need to talk. This is not over. Marcus. You're making a huge mistake. Isabella. Good luck. You're braver than I am. And finally, Mateo. Address is 432 Park Avenue, penthouse level. Security code is 1847. Welcome home. Home. The word felt foreign, dangerous, impossibly hopeful. Arya pulled up to her current apartment building, the place that had been her prison and sanctuary for 8 years, and began packing the pieces of her life that mattered. Photographs of her mother, books in 4 languages, the few items of jewelry she'd inherited, clothes that were hers, not gifts from her father, meant to make her presentable. It all fit in 3 suitcases. As she loaded the last bag into her car, her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Arya Moretti? The voice was smooth, cultured, and utterly cold. I don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm Luca DeSantis. Ice flooded her veins. How did you get this number? Your father gave it to me. We are engaged, after all. Luca's tone suggested amusement. I hear you've been spending time with Matteo Vitale. I wanted to call and remind you that you belong to me. Whatever games you're playing with Vitale, they end now. I don't belong to anyone, Arya said, her voice steadier than she felt. You belong to whoever your father says you belong to, and he says, you're mine. Luca's voice hardened. I'm a patient man, Arya, but I don't share. If I hear you've been with Matteo again, there will be consequences. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Ask Matteo about what happened to the last woman who tried to play us against each other. Ask him about Sofia Russo. The line went dead. Arya stood in the parking garage, her hands shaking, Luca's words echoing in her mind. She pulled out her phone and texted Matteo. Who is Sofia Russo? The response came quickly. Get to my penthouse. Now. We need to talk. Arya drove through Manhattan with her heart in her throat, Luca's threat following her like a shadow. When she finally pulled up to 432 Park Avenue, one of the most exclusive residential buildings in the city, a valet appeared immediately to take her car. Ms. Moretti, he said, as if he'd been expecting her. Mr. Vitale asked that you be sent directly up. The elevator ride to the penthouse level felt like ascending to another world. When the doors opened directly into Matteo's apartment, Arya's breath caught. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Manhattan that made the city look like a constellation of stars. The space was modern, masculine, expensive in the way that whispered rather than shouted. And standing in the center of it all, still wearing the black suit from earlier, was Matteo. You're safe, he said, the relief in his voice palpable. Luca called me. Arya set down her bags. He threatened me, told me I belonged to him. And he mentioned someone named Sofia Russo. Matteo's expression darkened. Come here. She crossed the space between them, and Matteo's hands came up to frame her face, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. Sofia Russo was the daughter of a smaller family trying to broker peace between the Vitales and the DeSantis family 3 years ago. She was young, beautiful, caught between two men courting her, one of my cousins and Luca DeSantis. What happened to her? She chose my cousin. Luca took it as an insult. Matteo's jaw tightened. 2 weeks before the wedding, Sofia disappeared. Her body was found in the river 3 days later. Officially, it was ruled an accident. Unofficially, everyone knew Luca killed her as a message. No one rejects a DeSantis. Horror washed over Arya. And no one did anything? Her family was too small to retaliate. My cousin wanted war, but my father was still alive then, and he chose diplomacy over vengeance. It's one of the few decisions I'll never forgive him for. Matteo's thumbs traced her cheekbones. That's who Luca DeSantis is, Arya. That's what he does to women who choose someone else. Then we need to move fast, Arya said, her voice hard. Before he can do anything. We will. Matteo pulled her closer. But first, you need to understand something. From this moment forward, you're under 24-hour protection. My people will be with you everywhere. You don't go anywhere alone. You don't take calls from numbers you don't recognize. You don't deviate from approved routes. That sounds like prison. That sounds like staying alive. Matteo's expression was fierce. Luca made his move tonight by calling you. He's testing boundaries, trying to intimidate you into compliance. We respond by making you legally untouchable as quickly as possible. 2 weeks, you said. I'm moving it up. 1 week. We'll get married at my estate with minimal guests, file the paperwork immediately, and make a public announcement that leaves no room for interpretation. 1 week. 7 days to go from unwanted daughter to powerful wife. 7 days to transform her entire life. Okay, Arya breathed. 1 week. Matteo's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Welcome to the family, Arya Vitale. The name sent shivers down her spine. Arya Vitale. Not Moretti, not her father's scandal or Luca's property. Something entirely new, something powerful. The first morning in Matteo's penthouse, Arya woke to find him already gone. A note on the pillow beside her. She'd slept in the guest room, despite Matteo's pointed look when he'd shown her the master suite. Explained he had business across the river but would return by noon. Security would remain outside her door. She wasn't a prisoner, the note assured her. She was protected. Arya wasn't sure there was a difference. She showered in a bathroom larger than her old bedroom, dressed in clothes that still felt too new, too expensive, and found coffee waiting in the kitchen along with a spread of pastries she hadn't ordered. A woman in her 50s stood by the counter, arranging fresh flowers in a crystal vase. Ms. Moretti? The woman said warmly. I'm Teresa. I manage the household. Mr. Vitale asked me to make sure you had everything you needed. I don't need much, Arya said carefully, pouring coffee into a cup that probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget used to. But thank you. Teresa's smile was knowing. Mr. Vitale said you'd say that. He also said to tell you his library is fully stocked, the gym is on the lower level, and you're welcome to use his office if you need workspace. She paused. And that his lawyers will be here at 2 p.m. to review the prenuptial agreement. Reality crashed back. The wedding. 1 week? Arya's hands tightened around the coffee cup. Are you all right, dear? Teresa asked gently. I'm marrying a man I barely know in 7 days to escape a marriage to a man who kills women who reject him, Arya said flatly. I'm not sure all right is achievable. Teresa studied her for a long moment, then set down the flowers. I've worked for the Vitale family for 30 years. I knew Matteo's father, his grandfather, watched Matteo grow from a boy into the man he is now. She moved closer. He's hard, ruthless when necessary, but he's not cruel, and he doesn't lie. If he promised you partnership, he means it. How can you be sure? Because I watched him refuse a dozen marriage arrangements his father tried to force on him. Socialites, daughters of allied families, women who would have brought political advantage. He turned them all down. Said he wouldn't marry unless he found someone worthy of standing beside him. Teresa's eyes were steady. Then he saw you at a gala 6 months ago, and everything changed. He started asking questions, watching, learning everything about you. I've never seen him so focused on anything that wasn't business. The words should have been romantic. Instead, they felt like confirmation of how calculated this all was. What if I'm just another strategic move? Arya asked quietly. Then you use him the same way he's using you. Teresa said pragmatically. This is our world, Miss Moretti. Love is a luxury. Power is survival. And from where I'm standing, you're about to have more power than any woman in this city who isn't named Vitale. Arya's phone buzzed. A text from her father. We need to talk before you make a catastrophic mistake. She deleted it without responding. Another text, this time from Marcus. Luca knows. He's furious. Watch your back. And finally, one from an unknown number that made her blood run cold. Enjoy your week, Arya. It's the last one you'll have. L.D. Luca DeSantis. Threatening her openly now, confident enough to sign his initials. Teresa, Arya said, her voice steadier than she felt. Where's the security detail Matteo mentioned? Right outside the front door, Franco and Dimitri. Ex-military, both of them. They'll stay with you whenever you leave the penthouse. Teresa's expression turned serious. Did something happen? Arya showed her the text. Teresa's face hardened. I'll inform Mr. Vitale immediately. In the meantime, you don't go anywhere without Franco and Dimitri. Not even to the lobby. The reality of her situation settled over Arya like a weighted blanket. She wasn't just changing families. She was stepping into an active war zone, and the battle lines were already drawn. When Matteo returned at noon, he found Arya in his library, surrounded by books in Italian, French, and Russian, taking notes on territorial disputes and organized crime throughout history. She looked up when he entered, and something in his expression told her he already knew about Luca's text. Show me, he said without preamble. Arya handed him her phone. Matteo's jaw tightened as he read, his knuckles going white around the device. He's trying to intimidate you into breaking the engagement. It's working, Arya admitted. I'm terrified. Good. Matteo set down her phone and crossed to where she sat, pulling her to her feet. Fear keeps you careful, but don't let it paralyze you. Luca wants you scared enough to run back to your father to accept the arrangement Leon made. What's stopping him from just taking me, forcing the issue? Me. Matteo's hand settled on her waist, solid and reassuring. And the fact that kidnapping my fiancée would start a war he can't win. The DeSantis family is powerful, but they're not strong enough to take on the Vitales directly. Luca knows this. He's posturing. He killed Sofia Russo. Sofia's family couldn't retaliate. You're different. You're under my protection now, which means touching you brings down the full weight of Vitale resources. Matteo's eyes were fierce. He won't risk open war, but he will try other methods. Intimidation, sabotage, turning allies against us. How do we fight that? We accelerate everything. My lawyers are coming in an hour to finalize the prenuptial agreement. Tomorrow, we'll visit the courthouse and file preliminary paperwork. By the end of the week, you'll be legally protected even before the wedding. Arya nodded, trying to process the speed at which her life was changing. Your mother's estate, where the ceremony will be. Can I see it before the wedding? Something flickered across Matteo's face. Grief, maybe, or memory. We'll go tomorrow. It's in Westchester, about an hour from here. My mother loved that house. Loved? Past tense? She died when I was 19. Cancer. Matteo's voice was carefully neutral. My father never recovered. He died 3 years later. Some people said it was a heart attack. I think it was a broken heart. The vulnerability in his admission surprised her. This man who commanded rooms and inspired fear was sharing pieces of his history like they were fragile things. I'm sorry, Arya said softly. Don't be. They had 30 years together. Real partnership, real love. It's rare in our world. Matteo's thumb traced her jawline. But it's what I want. Eventually. Not immediately. I know we're not there yet. But someday, I want what they had. The honesty was disarming. Arya found herself leaning into his touch, her body making decisions her mind was still processing. What if we never get there, she asked. What if this stays transactional forever? Then we'll have a successful business partnership and mutual protection. That's more than most marriages in our world achieve. Matteo's lips curved slightly. But I don't think that's where we're headed. Why not? Because you're already thinking strategically about how to use this marriage for leverage. Because you spent your morning researching territorial disputes instead of shopping or planning wedding details. Because you just asked to see my mother's estate instead of demanding a society wedding at the plaza. His eyes were warm. You're exactly who I thought you were, Arya. And that's someone I could genuinely build something with. Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Teresa's voice carried from the foyer, greeting someone. Mateo stepped back, his professional mask sliding into place. The lawyers. Ready to negotiate your future? Arya squared her shoulders. Let's go. The next 2 hours were a masterclass in legal protection. Mateo's attorneys, 3 of them, all sharply dressed and ruthlessly competent, walked Arya through a prenuptial agreement that protected her in ways she hadn't even considered. Separate bank accounts with substantial deposits in her name. Property rights. Divorce clauses that ensured she'd leave with enough money to disappear if necessary. Legal documentation that made her a partner in specific Vitale business ventures. This is more than I expected, Arya said, scanning the documents. This is what partnership looks like. The lead attorney, a woman named Catherine with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing, replied, Mr. Vitale was very specific about ensuring you had autonomy and protection. What about his protection? Arya asked, looking at Mateo. This agreement gives me everything. What do you get? A wife who can't be leveraged against me because she has her own resources, Mateo said. A partner who stays because she wants to, not because she's trapped. That's worth more than money. Arya signed the documents with a hand that trembled slightly. Catherine witnessed the signatures, then passed everything to her associates for filing. Congratulations, Miss Moretti. You're now one of the most legally protected women in New York. Catherine's smile was genuine. Use it wisely. After the lawyers left, Mateo poured 2 glasses of whiskey, expensive, smooth, the kind that burned pleasantly going down. He handed one to Arya, then raised his own in a toast. To partnership. To survival, Arya countered. To both. They drank, and Arya felt the alcohol warm her from the inside out, loosening the tension that had been coiled in her chest since Luca's text. What happens now? She asked. Now we prepare for war. Mateo set down his glass. Because Luca won't accept this quietly. Neither will your father. The next few days will be critical. They'll try everything to break us apart before the wedding makes it permanent. What kind of everything? Threats? Bribes? Attempts to turn my allies against me by suggesting I'm weak for choosing you over strategic advantage. Mateo's expression hardened. They'll go after your reputation, try to paint you as a gold digger or a spy. They'll spread rumors designed to make me question your loyalty. Will you? Question my loyalty? No. The certainty in his voice was absolute. Because I know exactly why you're doing this. Survival, power, escape from a nightmare. Those are honest reasons. I can work with honest. Arya's phone buzzed. Isabella. She answered, putting it on speaker at Mateo's gesture. Arya, where are you? Isabella's voice was tight with urgency. Safe. Why? Because Father just met with Antonio DeSantis. They're accelerating your engagement to Luca. They want to announce it publicly tomorrow at the Russo charity dinner. Arya's blood turned to ice. Tomorrow? They're trying to force your hand. If they announce the engagement publicly before you can marry Mateo, it creates complications. Social pressure. Family obligation. They're banking on you not being willing to publicly reject Luca and humiliate both families. Mateo's expression was carved from stone. Tell your father that if he makes that announcement, it will be the last decision he makes regarding Arya. Isabella was quiet for a moment. Is that Matteo Vitale? Yes? Good. Because you need to know something else. Luca's already threatening retaliation. He's telling anyone who'll listen that Arya belongs to him, and Matteo's interference is an act of war. Let him talk, Matteo said coldly. Actions matter more than words. He's planning actions too. I don't know details, but I overheard Antonio telling Father to prepare for necessary measures if Arya doesn't comply. Isabella's voice dropped. Be careful, both of you. The call ended, and Arya looked at Matteo, seeing her own calculation reflected in his eyes. We move up the wedding, she said. Not next week. Now. Tonight, Matteo agreed. Small ceremony, legal witnesses, file the paperwork immediately. By the time your father makes his announcement tomorrow, you'll already be my wife. The speed of it was dizzying, but Arya felt certainty settle in her bones. Do it. Matteo made 3 phone calls. The first to his attorney, demanding emergency marriage licensing. The second to a judge he had in his pocket, arranging an immediate ceremony. The third to his security team, doubling protection and preparing for potential retaliation. By 6 p.m., Aria found herself standing in Mateo's penthouse wearing a simple white dress Teresa had somehow procured in 2 hours. No guests except Teresa and Catherine as witnesses. No flowers, no music, no ceremony beyond the legal minimum. Just Mateo in a dark suit looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for years. The judge, an older man who clearly owed Mateo significant favors, arrived at 7. He kept the ceremony brief, efficient, legally binding. Do you, Matteo Vitale, take Aria Moretti to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. And do you, Aria Moretti, take Matteo Vitale to be your lawfully wedded husband? Aria looked at the man who'd offered her escape, protection, and partnership. The man who'd seen her as a queen when everyone else saw a scandal. The man who was now her only shield against forces that wanted to destroy her. I do. Then by the power vested in me by the state of New York, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Mateo stepped forward, his hands framing her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. May I kiss my bride? Aria nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging her throat. The kiss was different from the one at the gala. Less performance, more promise. His lips moved against hers with a certainty that made her feel claimed and cherished in equal measure. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with something that looked like possession and felt like protection. Hello, Mrs. Vitale. The name hit her like electricity. Mrs. Vitale. No longer Moretti, no longer her father's unwanted daughter or Luca's intended victim. Something entirely new. They signed the marriage certificate while Catherine and Teresa witnessed, making it legal and binding. The judge left with an envelope that Aria suspected contained far more than his standard fee. Teresa hugged her with tears in her eyes. Catherine shook her hand with approval. And then they were alone. Husband and wife. Mateo poured champagne, handed her a glass. To the shortest engagement in New York history. To surviving it, Aria added. They drank, and Aria felt the weight of the day settling into her bones. She was married, 24 years old, and married to a man she'd known for less than a week. It should have felt like a mistake. Instead, it felt like the first real choice she'd ever made. What happens tomorrow? She asked, when my father makes his announcement and discovers I'm already married. War, Mateo said simply. But we'll be ready. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then showed her the screen. A press release ready to send to every major media outlet in the city. Matteo Vitale and Aria Moretti. Wed in private ceremony. The Vitale family is pleased to announce the marriage of Matteo Vitale to Aria Moretti, which took place this evening in an intimate ceremony. Mrs. Vitale will be taking an active role in Vitale family operations and looks forward to contributing to continued growth and success. Simple, direct, undeniable. When does this go out? Aria asked. The moment your father takes the stage tomorrow to announce your engagement to Luca, we'll steal his thunder and make it clear you're already mine. The strategy was ruthless. Aria loved it. He'll be furious. He'll be impotent, Matteo corrected, because there's nothing he can do. You're legally my wife. Any contract he signed with Antonio DeSantis is void. Any promises he made are broken. And if he tries to retaliate, he'll find himself at war with the Vitales. Aria's phone erupted with messages. Her father, Marcus, Isabella, even Richard Castellano somehow having heard rumors. She ignored them all except Isabella's. Did you do it? Aria typed back. Yes, I'm married. Isabella's response came quickly. Thank God. Stay safe. I'll try to run interference with father, but he's going to lose his mind. Then another message, this one that made Aria's blood run cold. Luca just found out. He's on his way to Matteo's building. Aria showed Matteo the text. His expression turned lethal. He won't get past lobby security, but we should prepare for confrontation. Matteo made a quick call. Double the security. No one gets to the penthouse floor without my explicit approval. And if Luca DeSantis shows up, detain him until NYPD arrives. Will they come? Aria asked. For me? Immediately. I have half the force on payroll. Mateo's smile was sharp. Luca can scream all he wants. He won't get near you. 20 minutes later, Mateo's phone rang. Security. Sir, we have a situation. Luca DeSantis is in the lobby demanding to see you. He's got 4 men with him, and he's threatening to come up whether we allow it or not. Mateo put the call on speaker. Tell him I'll meet him in the lobby. 5 minutes. Sir, that's not... I know. Do it anyway. He ended the call, then looked at Arya. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me or Teresa. I'm not letting you face him alone. You are. Because if he sees you, this becomes about possession instead of business. I need to make this conversation strategic, not emotional. Mateo cupped her face. Trust me. I've handled men like Luca before. He killed Sofia Russo. He killed an unprotected woman from a weak family. You're my wife now. That changes everything. Mateo kissed her forehead. I'll be back in 20 minutes. If I'm not, call Catherine. She has instructions. Then he was gone, leaving Arya alone in the penthouse with her racing heart and her new last name. She paced the living room, watching the clock. 15 minutes, 16, 17. At 19 minutes, the elevator opened and Mateo stepped out, alone, unharmed. But his knuckles were bruised and there was a dangerous satisfaction in his eyes. What happened? Arya demanded. Luca tried to threaten me, said I'd stolen his property, disrespected his family, started a war I couldn't win. Mateo poured himself whiskey, drank it in one swallow. I explained that you were never his property, that any agreements made without your consent were void, and that if he ever contacted you again, I'd destroy everything he'd ever built. And he just accepted that? No, he took a swing at me. Mateo flexed his bruised hand. I broke his nose. Security escorted him out. By now, half the city knows Luca DeSantis got humiliated in my lobby. Arya should have been horrified by the violence. Instead, she felt a fierce satisfaction. Will he retaliate? He'll try, but we're ready. Mateo crossed to her, pulling her against his chest. You're safe, Arya. I promised you that. I meant it. She wrapped her arms around him, feeling his heartbeat steady against her cheek. This man who'd claimed her at a gala, who'd proposed after one meeting, who'd married her in a living room ceremony to protect her from monsters. This stranger who was now her husband. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me. When no one else did. Mateo's arms tightened. They were all blind. You were always worth seeing. They stood there as the city glittered beyond the windows, 2 people bound by strategy and survival, beginning something that might someday become more. The next morning, Arya woke in the master bedroom. She'd finally agreed to share it, though they'd maintained careful distance in the enormous bed, to find Mateo already awake, watching news coverage on his phone. Your father made his announcement, he said, turning the screen toward her. The footage showed Leon Moretti at the Russo charity dinner, standing at a podium with Antonio DeSantis beside him, preparing to announce Arya's engagement to Luca. Then mid-sentence, someone handed him a phone. His expression transformed from confident to furious in seconds. The camera caught the exact moment he read Mateo's press release. Arya Moretti marries Matteo Vitale in private ceremony. Leon's face went purple. Antonio looked ready to commit murder. And Luca, visible in the crowd, had a bandage across his broken nose and eyes that promised violence. The press exploded with questions. Leon stammered through non-answers. Antonio stormed off the stage. The carefully orchestrated announcement dissolved into chaos. Mateo's smile was sharp with satisfaction. And that's how you win a war before the first shot is fired. Arya watched her father's humiliation play out on screen and felt nothing but cold vindication. He'd tried to sell her. She'd sold herself to someone who valued her. What happens now? She asked. Now we consolidate power, build alliances, make it clear that Mrs. Arya Vitale is not just my wife. She's my partner. Mateo set down the phone. And we wait for your father and the DeSantis family to make their next move. Because they will. I'm ready. I know. Mateo pulled her close. That's why I chose you. The words should have felt clinical. Instead, they felt like the beginning of something that might eventually resemble what Mateo's parents had: partnership, trust, maybe eventually something more. But first, they had a war to win. The retaliation came 3 days after the wedding, swift and vicious as a blade between the ribs. Aria was in Mateo's office, their office now, he'd insisted, reviewing shipping manifests when Catherine arrived unannounced, her expression grim enough to make Aria's stomach drop. "We have a problem," Catherine said without preamble. "Antonio DeSantis just filed a lawsuit claiming breach of contract. He's saying Leon Moretti entered into a binding marriage agreement on your behalf, and by marrying Mateo, you violated that contract." Aria set down the papers. "Can he do that?" "He can try. The contract's validity is questionable. You never signed it, never consented to its terms. But Antonio has judges in his pocket, and he's pushing for an emergency hearing." Catherine's jaw tightened. "He's also claiming damages, $50 million. That's insane. That's strategy. He knows he'll lose, but the lawsuit itself creates problems. It ties up resources, generates negative press, makes our business partners nervous." Catherine pulled out her tablet, showing Aria headlines that had appeared in the last hour. Vitale marriage sparks legal battle. DeSantis family claims fraud. Aria Moretti's loyalties questioned. Mateo appeared in the doorway, his expression carved from ice. He'd been in meetings all morning with shipping contractors, but clearly someone had alerted him. "When's the hearing?" he asked. "Next week, Judge Morrison. He's in Antonio's pocket." "I know, which is why we need to be prepared for an unfavorable ruling." Catherine looked between them. "Even if we win on appeal, the damage will be done. Antonio's counting on that." Aria's mind raced through possibilities, strategies, angles of attack. What if we don't fight it in court? Both Mateo and Catherine looked at her. "Explain," Mateo said. "Antonio wants to make this about breach of contract, about me being property that was promised and then stolen. He wants a legal battle that paints me as the problem." Aria stood, pacing. "What if instead we make it about something else entirely? Something that shifts the narrative?" "I'm listening," Catherine said. "The contract Leon signed, it was negotiated based on certain assumptions about the DeSantis family's business legitimacy, right? Terms that benefited both families through shipping route access and territorial agreements?" "Yes," Mateo confirmed, his eyes sharp with understanding. "What if we prove the DeSantis family isn't a legitimate business partner? What if we expose operations that would make any contract with them legally void due to criminal enterprise?" Catherine's expression shifted from grim to intrigued. "You want to go after their entire operation. I want to make it impossible for them to sue us without exposing themselves to federal prosecution." Aria looked at Mateo. "You said you have people who gather intelligence. What do we know about DeSantis operations that they'd want to keep hidden?" Mateo was quiet for a long moment, calculation flickering across his face. Then he made a decision that Aria could see reshaping his entire strategy. "Catherine, give us the room." The attorney left without question, and Mateo pulled Aria to the window overlooking the city. When he spoke, his voice was low, meant only for her. "What I'm about to tell you stays between us. Not even Catherine knows all of this." "Okay." "The DeSantis family controls shipping routes, yes, but their real money comes from human trafficking. They move people, mostly women and children, through their ports, selling them to the highest bidder. It's why Antonio was so eager for the marriage arrangement with your father. Leon's legitimate business connections would have provided perfect cover for expanding operations." Horror washed over Aria, cold and nauseating. "And my father knew?" "I don't know. Maybe he suspected. Maybe he chose not to ask questions." Mateo's hand settled on her shoulders. "But this is dangerous information, Aria. The kind that gets people killed. If we expose the DeSantis trafficking operation, we're not just ending a lawsuit. We're starting a war that will be bloody and brutal. They killed Sofia Russo for rejecting Luca. They're trafficking human beings. They threatened to kill me for choosing you." Aria's voice was steel. "I'm not afraid of their war. I'm afraid of what happens if we don't stop them." Mateo studied her face, and something in his expression shifted. Pride, maybe. Or recognition that the woman he'd married was exactly who he'd hoped she'd be. "If we do this, there's no going back. Your father will know you were involved. The entire criminal network will see you as a threat. You'll never be safe standing on the sidelines again. I was never safe on the sidelines, Arya said. At least now I can fight back. Mateo's lips curved into something fierce and approving. Then we go to war. He made a series of calls summoning people to the penthouse. Within an hour, Arya found herself in a room with 6 of Mateo's most trusted operatives, men and women who looked like accountants and lawyers but moved with the precision of soldiers. "This is my wife, Arya," Mateo said, and the words carried weight that made everyone in the room stand straighter. "She'll be working directly with us on this operation. Anything you tell me, you tell her. Understood?" Nods all around. Arya felt the shift in the room, the acknowledgement that she wasn't decorative or symbolic, but actually part of the team. A woman named Elena, sharp-eyed, mid-30s, with the coiled energy of a predator, spread photographs across the conference table. "These are the DeSantis shipping facilities. 3 legitimate operations in Red Hook, Newark, and Connecticut, and 2 shadow operations we've identified in international waters, cargo ships registered under shell companies that never dock in U.S. ports." "Where do the ships go?" Arya asked. "Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, South America. They pick up cargo and transport it to private buyers." Elena's expression was grim. "We've intercepted communications suggesting they move anywhere from 20 to 50 people per month." The numbers made Arya sick. 20 to 50 lives destroyed, sold, disappeared. And her father had been willing to tie their family to this operation. "Do we have proof?" Mateo asked. "Hard evidence that would stand up in federal court?" "We have communications, financial records showing payments from known trafficking networks, and testimony from 3 people who escaped DeSantis ships." Elena pulled up documents on a screen. "But going public with this information would expose our sources and potentially get them killed." "What if we didn't go to federal authorities?" Arya said slowly, an idea forming. "What if we went to someone who could destroy the DeSantis family without a trial?" Everyone looked at her. "The families," she continued, "the other crime organizations in the city. Most of them have rules about certain operations, drugs, weapons, territory. But trafficking, especially children, that crosses lines even criminals won't cross." Mateo's eyes lit with understanding. "You want to expose Antonio to the council." "What's the council?" Arya asked. "The 5 most powerful families in New York meet quarterly to resolve disputes and establish territory boundaries. It's how we avoid all-out war." Mateo leaned back, considering. "If we bring evidence of DeSantis trafficking operations to the council, they'll vote on sanctions, possibly exile, or execution," Elena added quietly. "Can we call an emergency session?" Arya asked. "With sufficient cause, yes." Mateo looked at his team. "How fast can we compile everything into a presentation that proves beyond doubt what the DeSantis family is doing?" 72 hours, Elena said. "Maybe less if we pull everyone off other projects." "Do it," Mateo's voice was command. "And find out everything you can about Antonio's current operations. Where the next shipment is coming from, when it's arriving, how many people are being transported. We need real-time intelligence." The team dispersed, leaving Arya and Mateo alone with maps and photographs that documented atrocities. "Are you sure about this?" Mateo asked quietly. "Once we make this move, your father will know you were involved in destroying his alliance. He'll see it as ultimate betrayal." "He betrayed me first," Arya said, her voice hard. "When he decided I was worth less than a shipping route. When he promised me to a man who kills women. When he chose power over protecting his own daughter." Mateo pulled her close, and Arya let herself lean into his strength. They'd been married less than a week, but already she felt the partnership he'd promised beginning to form. Not love, not yet, but trust. Mutual respect. A shared understanding that they were stronger together than apart. "There's something else you should know," Mateo said against her hair. "Your sister Isabella has been feeding us information." Arya pulled back. "What?" "She reached out 3 months ago, before I ever approached you at the gala. She knew about your father's plans with the DeSantis family, and she wanted to help stop it. She's been our source inside the Moretti operation." The revelation was staggering. "Isabella was helping you?" "She was helping you. She knew what would happen if you married Luca, and she couldn't stand by and watch." Mateo's expression was serious. "She's risking everything by feeding us intelligence. If Leon finds out, she'll be disowned. Or worse, Arya's throat tightened. Her sister, the one she'd thought didn't care, who'd spent years pretending she didn't exist, had been protecting her from the shadows. Does she know we're going after the DeSantis family? I briefed her this morning. She's trying to delay your father's response to the lawsuit, buy us time to present our evidence to the council. Mateo paused. She also said to tell you she's proud of you. Tears pricked Arya's eyes. She blinked them back, focusing on the work ahead. There would be time for emotion later. Right now, they had a case to build. The next 72 hours were a blur of evidence compilation, witness interviews, and strategic planning. Arya worked alongside Mateo's team, using her language skills to translate intercepted communications, her understanding of family dynamics to predict how different council members would react, her analytical mind to organize information into a narrative that would be impossible to refute. She barely slept. When she did, it was for a few hours curled against Mateo's side, his arm draped protectively around her waist. They hadn't consummated the marriage. There hadn't been time, and neither of them wanted their first time together to be rushed between strategy sessions. But the physical intimacy was growing, natural and inevitable. On the third morning, Elena arrived with news that made everyone go still. We intercepted a communication. There's a ship arriving tonight at the Connecticut facility. Estimated cargo, 42 people, mostly women between 18 and 30, Eastern European origin. Tonight? Mateo's voice was sharp. 11 p.m. They're moving it up because of the lawsuit. Antonio wants to complete the transaction before we can interfere. Elena's expression was fierce. This is our chance. If we can intercept that shipment with witnesses present, we have undeniable proof. Arya's mind raced. The council meeting is tomorrow. If we can show them actual victims, people being trafficked in real time, it becomes impossible to deny. It's also extremely dangerous, Mateo said, his eyes on Arya. If Antonio realizes we're intercepting the shipment, he'll retaliate with force. People will die. People are already dying, Arya said quietly. 42 of them, if we don't stop this. The room was silent, everyone waiting for Mateo's decision. He looked at the maps, the evidence, the faces of his team. Then he looked at Arya, and she saw him weighing her safety against the mission. I'm going, she said before he could speak. If we're presenting this to the council, I need to be able to testify to what I witnessed. Secondhand accounts aren't enough. Absolutely not. You promised me partnership. That means I don't sit in safety while you take risks. Arya stepped closer. I speak 4 languages, including Russian. If those women are Eastern European, I might be the only person who can communicate with them. You need me there. Mateo's jaw worked. She could see him fighting between the instinct to protect her and the logic of her argument. You stay behind me at all times. You wear a vest. And if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments. Deal. He didn't look happy about it, but he nodded. Elena, coordinate with our people at the Connecticut port. I want surveillance in place by sunset. Tactical teams positioned by 10 p.m. We move at 11 sharp. The team dispersed to prepare. Mateo caught Arya's arm, pulling her aside. If anything happens to you, nothing will happen, Arya interrupted. We'll be careful, strategic. I'm serious, Arya. His hands framed her face, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. I just found you. I'm not losing you to Antonio's war. You won't. She covered his hands with hers. We're in this together, remember? Partnership. Partnership, he agreed. Then he kissed her, and it was different from every kiss before. Not performance or claim or promise. It was fear and hope, and something that felt dangerously close to actual emotion. When they pulled apart, Arya's heart was racing. After tonight, Mateo said quietly, when this is over and Antonio's dealt with, we're going to talk, really talk, about what this is becoming. What is it becoming? Something I didn't plan for. His thumb traced her lower lip. Something that might be more than partnership. Before Arya could respond, Elena called from the other room that they needed to move. The moment shattered, replaced by operational necessity. They drove to Connecticut in a convoy of 3 black SUVs, arriving at a warehouse 2 miles from the DeSantis facility just after dark. Mateo's tactical team was already in position, 8 people with military precision and enough firepower to start a small war. Arya wore a bulletproof vest under a dark jacket, her hair pulled back, a communication device in her ear. She felt like a character in a movie, except the danger was real and the stakes were lives. The ship docks in 40 minutes, Elena reported, monitoring communications from a laptop. DeSantis security is light, only 6 people on site. They're not expecting interference. Overconfidence, Mateo said. It'll cost them. At 10:55 p.m., they moved into position. Arya stayed close to Mateo, her pulse thundering in her ears, adrenaline making everything sharp and clear. They approached the facility from the water side, using shadows and shipping containers for cover. The DeSantis ship appeared exactly on schedule, a mid-sized cargo vessel that looked legitimate on the surface. It docked, and Arya watched through night vision binoculars as men began unloading containers. "Can you see inside the containers?" Mateo asked one of his operatives. "Thermal imaging shows bodies. Lots of them." The woman's voice was tight. "They're packed in there like cargo." Rage burned through Arya's chest. These were people, human beings treated like commodities. The first container opened, and women began stumbling out, pale, terrified, some barely conscious. Arya's hands clenched into fists. "Now," Mateo said quietly into his comm. His team moved with synchronized precision. Lights flooded the dock. Vehicles surrounded the facility. DeSantis security reached for weapons, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. "Don't move!" Mateo's voice carried across the water. "You're surrounded. Release the women and surrender peacefully." For a moment, everything hung in balance. Then one of the DeSantis men made the mistake of drawing his gun. The firefight lasted less than 2 minutes. When it was over, 3 DeSantis security personnel were wounded, 2 were fleeing into the darkness, and 1 was dead. Mateo's team had taken control of the facility. "Secure the women," Mateo ordered. "Medical attention for anyone who needs it, and someone call the witnesses we arranged." Arya ran toward the shipping containers, switching to Russian as she approached the frightened women. "It's okay. You're safe now. We're here to help." The relief on their faces was immediate. They didn't know who Arya was or why she was there, but she spoke their language and her voice was gentle. Several of them collapsed into her arms, sobbing. "How many of you are there?" Arya asked in Russian. 42, one woman said, her voice shaking. "We were told we'd have jobs in America, good jobs, but they locked us in containers, wouldn't let us out, said we belong to them now." Trafficking, exactly as Elena had reported. Over the next hour, representatives from 3 other families arrived, witnesses Mateo had arranged who could testify to what they'd seen. The women were given food, water, medical attention, statements were recorded, photographs documented everything. By 2 a.m., the evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Antonio DeSantis had been trafficking human beings through his shipping operations, and Arya Vitale, née Moretti, had helped expose it. The emergency council meeting convened at noon the next day in a private estate outside the city. Arya walked into the room beside Mateo, her head high, her spine straight, wearing a navy suit that said professional and a wedding ring that said protected. The 5 family heads sat in a semicircle, older men with power carved into their faces and blood on their hands. Leon Moretti was among them, his expression unreadable when his eyes landed on Arya. Antonio DeSantis sat to his right, confident and dismissive, until Mateo began presenting evidence. The photographs of women in shipping containers, the financial records showing payments from trafficking networks, the testimony from victims recorded and translated, the communications intercepted between Antonio and his buyers. Each piece of evidence landed like a hammer blow. The other family heads' expressions transformed from skeptical to horrified to furious. When Mateo finished, the room was silent. "These allegations are fabricated," Antonio said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Vitale is trying to destroy my family because he stole my intended bride." "I was never yours," Arya said, speaking for the first time. Every eye in the room turned to her. "You tried to buy me through a contract I never signed. When I chose my own husband, you retaliated with lawsuits and threats. But this," she gestured to the evidence, "this isn't about me. This is about 42 women you were selling like cargo. Women I spoke to myself last night. Women who confirmed everything in these documents." "You have no authority here," Antonio spat. "You're Leon's bastard daughter playing at being important." "She's my wife," Mateo said coldly, "which gives her more authority than you're about to have." One of the other family heads, Vincent Russo, who controlled the restaurant and hospitality sectors, stood. I've seen enough. Trafficking is a line we don't cross. It brings federal attention, destroys legitimate operations, and violates every principle we operate under. I agree, said another head. This evidence is conclusive. Antonio's face went white. You can't possibly. Silence. The voice belonged to the fifth family head, an older woman named Margaret Chen, who controlled the gambling operations. She'd been quiet throughout the presentation, but her word carried the most weight. The evidence is clear. Antonio DeSantis, you have violated council rules and endangered all our operations with your recklessness. The vote, Vincent said formally. All in favor of exile and asset seizure? 4 hands rose. Only Leon abstained, his expression carefully blank. The motion carries, Margaret said. Antonio DeSantis, you and your family are hereby exiled from New York. All territories, holdings, and operations are forfeit. You have 72 hours to leave the city. If you return, the sentence is death. Antonio surged to his feet, rage contorting his features. This is because of her. That little... He didn't finish the sentence. Mateo moved faster than Arya had ever seen him move, crossing the room and slamming Antonio against the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. Finish that sentence, Mateo said, his voice deadly quiet. An exile will be the least of your problems. Security pulled them apart. Antonio was escorted from the room, still screaming threats. The other family heads filed out, some nodding at Mateo in approval, others carefully avoiding eye contact. Only Leon remained. Father and daughter stared at each other across the conference table, years of hurt and resentment hanging between them like fog. You destroyed an alliance that took me months to build, Leon said finally. You tried to sell me to a human trafficker, Arya replied. I'd say we're even. You chose him over your own family. You never made me feel like family. Arya's voice was steady, but emotion cracked through. I was always the mistake, the inconvenience, the daughter you acknowledged just enough to ease your conscience, but never enough to actually love. Leon's expression flickered. Your mother... Don't. Arya held up a hand. Don't use her as an excuse. She loved you. She died hoping you'd claim me as yours, and you sent flowers to her funeral. I didn't know what else to do, Leon said, and for the first time he sounded old, tired. You look so much like her. Being around you hurt. So you made sure I hurt too. Arya's eyes burned. I needed a father. What I got was a monthly check and occasional appearances at charity events. Mateo offered me more in one conversation than you gave me in 24 years. Leon was silent for a long moment, then quietly, I'm sorry. The words she'd waited her entire life to hear. They should have felt like victory. Instead, they just felt sad. I know, Arya said, but it doesn't change anything. I'm not Arya Moretti anymore. I'm Arya Vitale, and I'm exactly where I choose to be. She turned and walked out of the conference room, leaving her father behind. Mateo was waiting in the hallway, and when he saw her face, he pulled her into his arms without words. It's done, she whispered against his chest. It's done, he confirmed. Antonio's finished. The DeSantis empire is dismantled, and you're safe. Safe. The word felt foreign and wonderful. They drove back to the city in silence, Arya's head resting on Mateo's shoulder, exhaustion finally catching up with her. She'd faced her father, destroyed a trafficking operation, and helped exile a crime family. In 1 week of marriage, she'd transformed from invisible daughter to powerful wife. The woman who'd stood alone at charity galas no longer existed. In her place was someone new, someone stronger, someone who'd learned that queens weren't born into power. They seized it. The threat arrived 2 days after Antonio's exile, delivered to the penthouse in an unmarked envelope that made it past security because it looked like ordinary mail. Inside was a single photograph, Arya leaving the women's shelter in Brooklyn, the one she volunteered at under a fake name, and a message written in Luca's handwriting. Exile doesn't mean forgiveness. You took everything from me, I'll take everything from you. Mateo's face went pale when he saw it, then darkened to something murderous. He knows about the shelter. How? Arya's hands were steady, but her pulse hammered against her ribs. I've been so careful. Different name, no connections to the Vitale or Moretti families. He's had people watching you for months, probably since your father first negotiated the marriage arrangement. Matteo was already on the phone, barking orders to his security team. I want protection on that shelter immediately. Every woman there gets relocated to safe houses until this is resolved. And find out where Luca is. Now. Elena arrived within the hour, her expression grim. We have a problem. Luca didn't leave with his father. Antonio flew to Sicily 2 days ago with most of the family, but Luca stayed behind. He's holed up in a warehouse in Queens with a dozen loyal men, and according to our sources, he's planning something. What kind of something? Arya asked. The violent kind. He's making calls to mercenaries, putting together a team. He's talking about sending a message that will make every family in the city remember what happens when you cross a DeSantis. Matteo's hands clenched into fists. He's going to attack the shelter. Or attack me, Arya said quietly. Use the women there as bait. The room went silent. Then Matteo turned to his team, and Arya saw the ruthless strategist who'd built an empire take full control. We don't wait for him to move, we strike first. His voice was steel and ice. Elena, I need floor plans for that warehouse, entry points, security weaknesses. Get me a tactical team, the best we have. We're ending this tonight. Matteo, wait. Arya stepped forward. If you attack Luca directly, it looks like aggression. The council just voted to exile the DeSantis family. If you kill Luca now, some families might see it as overreach. I don't care what they see, Matteo said flatly. He threatened you. He threatened innocent women. He's planning violence. That ends tonight. I agree it ends tonight, but not with a raid that could turn into a bloodbath. Arya's mind raced through possibilities, strategies, ways to neutralize Luca without creating more problems. What if we give him what he wants? Everyone stared at her. Explain, Matteo said carefully. Luca wants revenge. Specifically, he wants to hurt me for humiliating him, for choosing you, for destroying his family's empire. Arya's voice was steady. What if we let him think he's getting his revenge? Set a trap using me as bait? Absolutely not. Matteo's response was immediate and absolute. I'm not using you as bait. You're not using me. I'm volunteering. Arya turned to Elena. If we leak information that I'm going to be at a specific location, somewhere isolated, somewhere Luca would see as an opportunity, he'll come for me. We control the environment, position your tactical team in advance, and when he shows up to make his move, we have him. Elena was nodding slowly, seeing the strategy. It could work. Luca's emotional right now, acting on rage instead of logic. If he thinks he has a chance to grab Arya, to use her as leverage or worse, he'll take it without thinking through the risks. No. Matteo's voice was final. Find another way. There is no other way that doesn't risk innocent lives or create political complications, Arya argued. If you raid the warehouse, his men will fight back. People will die. Maybe your people, maybe his, maybe both. If you kill Luca in an assault, some families will question whether it was justified or excessive. But if Luca comes after me, tries to kidnap or kill the wife of a family head, his death becomes self-defense. Justified. Clean. She's right, Elena said quietly. Strategically, this is our best option. Matteo looked at Arya like he wanted to lock her in the penthouse and never let her leave. And if something goes wrong, if he gets to you before we can intervene, then you train me. Arya stepped closer to him, her voice fierce. You teach me how to defend myself, how to buy time, how to survive until your team can get to me. You said you wanted a partner, Matteo. Partners share risks. The internal war playing out on Matteo's face was visible. The part of him that had claimed her at the gala, fighting with the part that was falling for her in ways he hadn't planned. Finally, he exhaled. If we do this, we do it my way, with my Stern. Complete control of the environment, overwhelming tactical advantage, and you wear a wire and a tracking device at all times. The second things go sideways, you follow the exit plan exactly as rehearsed. Deal. And we have 48 hours to prepare, not a minute less. Matteo pulled her against his chest, his heart hammering beneath her cheek. I just found you, Arya. I'm not losing you to that bastard's revenge fantasy. You won't, she promised, hoping she was right. The next 48 hours were intensive training compressed into a crash course in survival. Matteo brought in specialists, a former Special Forces operative who taught Arya basic self-defense, pressure points, and how to break common holds. A communications expert who wired her with devices so small they were nearly invisible. A tactical coordinator who walked her through every possible scenario and the appropriate response. But mostly, it was Matteo himself who trained her. In the penthouse gym, he taught her how to fight dirty. Eyes, throat, groin, anything that would buy her seconds to escape. He made her practice until her muscles screamed and her movements became instinctive. And when she was exhausted and frustrated, he held her and reminded her why she was doing this. The women at that shelter, he said quietly, they're counting on us to keep them safe. And I'm counting on you to come back to me. I will, Arya promised. We're partners, remember? I'm not going anywhere. On the second night, as they lay in bed, still maintaining careful distance, though that distance was shrinking daily, Matteo spoke into the darkness. After this is over, we should talk about what this marriage is becoming. Arya's breath caught. What do you think it's becoming? Something I didn't plan for. His hand found hers between them, fingers lacing together. I expected partnership, strategic alliance, mutual protection, and maybe, eventually, respect. I didn't expect to actually care about you. The admission hung in the air between them, vulnerable and honest. I care about you too, Arya whispered. I didn't want to. It seemed dangerous, caring about someone in a marriage that started as a transaction. But somewhere between the council meeting and learning to throw a proper punch, I started falling for my husband. Matteo turned toward her, and in the dim light from the city beyond the windows, she could see emotion written across his face. When this is over, he said, when Luca's dealt with and you're safe, I want to court you properly. Take you to dinner, learn everything about you that isn't strategic or operational. Find out who Arya Vitale is when she's not fighting for survival. I'd like that. Arya's throat was tight. Though I should warn you, I'm not very interesting outside of crisis situations. I read a lot, volunteer at shelters, speak too many languages for casual conversation. You're fascinating, Matteo interrupted. And when this is over, I'm going to prove it to you. He kissed her then, and it was different from every kiss before. Not performance, or claim, or seduction, but genuine affection that made Arya's chest ache with how much she wanted this to be real. When they pulled apart, Matteo rested his forehead against hers. Come back to me tomorrow. That's not a request from your husband. That's a plea from a man who's falling in love with his wife. Arya's eyes burned. I promise. They made love that night. Finally, inevitably, with a desperation born of knowing that tomorrow might change everything. And it was nothing like Arya had imagined. Not transactional or distant, but fierce and tender and real. Matteo touched her like she was precious, and claimed her like she was his, and when they finally lay tangled together in the aftermath, Arya felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't strategy anymore. This was love. The location Elena chose for the trap was perfect. An abandoned industrial building in Red Hook with multiple exits, clear sightlines, and enough space for Matteo's tactical team to position without being obvious. They spent the morning setting up cameras, establishing communication protocols, and rehearsing every possible scenario. Arya wore jeans and a sweater that hid the bulletproof vest beneath, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that gave Matteo access to place a nearly invisible tracking chip behind her ear. The wire was sewn into her bra, the emergency beacon built into her wedding ring. You remember the plan? Matteo asked for the third time, his hands framing her face. I remember. Enter through the south entrance. Move to the center of the main floor where the cameras have full coverage. Wait for Luca to make contact. If he approaches peacefully, I engage in conversation and try to get him to confess to his plans on tape. If he approaches with force, I trigger the beacon and follow exit route 3 to where your team is waiting. And if something goes wrong, I fight dirty, buy time, and trust that you'll get to me. Arya covered his hands with hers. I'll be fine, Matteo. We've planned for every possibility. Not every possibility. His jaw was tight. I can't plan for the possibility that I lose you. You won't. She pulled him down for a kiss that tasted like goodbye and promise and hope. I'm coming back to you. We have dinner reservations to keep, remember? Proper courting. I'm holding you to that. Matteo's embrace was almost crushing. I love you, Arya Vitale. Come back to me so I can spend the rest of my life proving it. I love you too, she whispered. Now let me go so I can end this. Elena and her team had leaked information to 3 sources known to have connections to Luca. Carefully crafted intelligence suggesting Arya would be at the Red Hook location at 4 p.m. to meet with representatives from the women's shelter, coordinating the relocation of residents. The bait was specific enough to be believable and irresistible enough to draw Luca out. Now it was 3:45, and Arya was walking into the building alone, her heart steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Matteo and his team were positioned in 3 locations: the roof, the basement access, and a warehouse across the street. 30 people total, all armed, all watching her every move through cameras and scopes. She was the most protected woman in New York, walking into danger with an army at her back. The building was exactly as Elena had described: vast, empty, echoing with the sound of her footsteps. Arya moved to the center of the main floor, standing in the pool of sunlight that streamed through broken windows, and waited. She didn't have to wait long. Luca DeSantis emerged from the shadows at 4:02, his face still bearing the marks of his broken nose, his eyes burning with rage that had festered for weeks. He had 4 men with him, not the dozen Elena had reported, which meant he'd either left people at the warehouse or split his forces. Arya Moretti, his voice echoed across the empty space. Sorry, Arya Vitale. I keep forgetting you traded up. Luca. Arya kept her voice steady, her posture relaxed despite every instinct screaming at her to run. I'm surprised to see you. I thought you'd left the city with your father. And missed the chance to say goodbye? Luca smiled, and it was the smile of a predator. We have unfinished business, you and I. We never had business. My father made arrangements without my consent. I chose differently. That's not unfinished. It's finished. Over. Over? Luca laughed, and the sound was ugly. You destroyed my family. My father's in exile because of you. Our territories are gone. Our operations dismantled. And you think it's just over? I think you destroyed your own family by trafficking human beings. Arya's voice was hard. I just made sure everyone knew about it. Luca's expression turned murderous. You self-righteous little... He stopped himself, visibly controlling his rage. I offered you everything. Marriage, power, protection. And you chose that Vitale bastard who only wanted you to destroy us. Matteo offered me partnership. You were offering ownership. There's a difference. There's no difference in our world, Luca shouted, his control slipping. Women are leverage. Assets. You should have been grateful I wanted you at all, considering what you are. A crime lord's mistake, a woman with no real value except what family she connects to. The words should have hurt. A month ago, they would have destroyed her. But Arya had spent the last weeks learning her own worth, and Luca's opinion meant nothing. If you really believe that, she said calmly, then why are you here? Why risk everything to confront a woman with no value? Luca's face contorted. Because you humiliated me. You made me look weak in front of every family in this city. You chose Matteo over me, and then you destroyed everything my family built. Your family built an empire on trafficking human beings. Destroying that doesn't make me the villain, Luca. It makes you one. Enough. Luca pulled a gun from his jacket, and Arya heard Matteo's voice explode in her earpiece. Beacon, now, exit Route 3. But Arya didn't move, because Luca's hand was shaking and his eyes were wild, and she realized with sudden clarity that he wasn't here to kidnap her. He was here to kill her, and nothing she said was going to change that. You took everything from me, Luca said, his voice breaking. So I'm taking everything from you, starting with your life. If you kill me, Matteo will hunt you to the ends of the earth. Arya's voice was steady, buying time. You know he will. You'll never be safe again. I'm not safe now. Luca's finger moved toward the trigger. At least this way, he'll suffer the way I'm suffering. Everything happened at once. Arya triggered the beacon in her ring, the signal screaming to Matteo's team. She dove sideways, exactly as she'd been trained, putting a concrete pillar between herself and Luca. The gunshot echoed like thunder, the bullet hitting stone where she'd been standing seconds before. Then the building erupted with activity. Matteo's tactical team poured in from 3 directions, weapons drawn, shouting for Luca and his men to drop their weapons. Luca's men scattered, two of them fleeing toward exits, the other two opening fire. Arya stayed behind the pillar, her heart hammering as chaos exploded around her. She heard more gunshots, shouted commands, the sound of bodies hitting the floor. And through it all, she heard Mateo's voice in her earpiece, rough with fear and fury. "Arya, talk to me. Are you hit?" "I'm fine. Behind the pillar on the east side. Luca's still armed. Stay down. We're coming to you." The firefight lasted maybe 90 seconds, but it felt like hours. When silence finally fell, Arya cautiously peered around the pillar and saw Luca on his knees, surrounded by Mateo's team, his gun on the floor and his hands raised. His men were either fleeing or subdued. Then Mateo was there, pulling her into his arms with enough force to knock the breath from her lungs. "You're okay. Tell me you're okay." "I'm okay." Arya's hands fisted in his jacket. "I'm fine. It worked. You almost got shot." "But I didn't. Your team got here in time." She pulled back enough to look at him, seeing the fear and rage and relief warring on his face. "It's over, Mateo. He came after me with clear intent to kill. Everything's on camera, on recording. This is self-defense, justified force, clean." Mateo's jaw worked, but he nodded. Then he turned to where Luca knelt, and his expression went cold. "You made a mistake coming after my wife." "She destroyed my family," Luca spat. "Your family destroyed itself." Mateo's voice was ice. "Arya just made sure the world knew about it. But you threatened her, stalked her, came here with intent to kill her. That's not politics or strategy. That's personal." "So kill me," Luca said bitterly. "Get it over with." "No." Mateo's smile was sharp. "Killing you would be mercy. Instead, you're going to stand trial for human trafficking, attempted murder, and violation of council exile. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison, knowing that Arya Vitale is free and powerful while you rot in a cell." "You can't." "I can. I have recorded evidence of tonight's attack. I have testimony from 42 women you trafficked. I have financial records, communications, everything needed to put you away forever." Mateo's eyes were merciless. "And I'm going to make sure every single day of your sentence, you remember that this happened because you underestimated the wrong woman." Elena approached with zip ties and a satisfied expression. "NYPD is en route. We'll hand him over with full documentation. This one's going through the legal system." As they secured Luca and his remaining men, Arya felt the tension that had been coiled in her chest for weeks finally begin to unwind. It was over. The threats, the danger, the fear that had followed her since the night at the gala, all of it was finally, truly over. Mateo pulled her away from the others, checking her over with hands that trembled slightly despite his controlled expression. "You're sure you're not hurt?" "I'm sure." "You trained me well." Arya's smile was shaky. "Though I'd prefer not to do that again." "Never again," Mateo vowed. "From now on, the only danger you face is boredom from too many charity dinners and negotiation meetings." "I can live with that." They stood there as the police arrived, as Luca was officially arrested, as Elena coordinated with law enforcement to ensure all evidence was properly documented. The sun was setting by the time they finally left the building, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. In the car ride back to the penthouse, Arya leaned against Mateo's shoulder, exhaustion finally catching up with her. What happens now? Now the DeSantis family is completely finished. Antonio's in exile. Luca's going to prison. Their territories will be redistributed among the other families. Mateo's arm tightened around her. "And you, my brilliant, terrifying wife, are going to help me decide how to restructure our operations." "Our operations?" "You didn't think I'd let you stop being involved after you just took down an entire crime family, did you?" Mateo's voice was warm with pride. "You're too valuable an asset. More importantly, you're too good at this." Arya considered the future spreading out before her, not as an unwanted daughter or a trophy wife, but as a genuine partner in one of the most powerful families in New York. It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. "I want to start a foundation," she said quietly. "Use some of our resources to help women like the ones Luca trafficked. Give them real opportunities, real protection. Make something good come out of all this." Mateo was quiet for a moment, then pressed a kiss to her hair. "Done. We'll announce it at next month's charity gala. The Vitale Foundation for Women's Protection and Empowerment. You'll run it." Just like that? Just like that. You're my partner, Arya. Your ideas, your priorities, they matter to me. He tilted her face up to meet his eyes. Everything about you matters to me. The words settled in her chest, warm and real and true. This man who'd claimed her at a gala had become the man she chose every day. Strategy had become partnership. Partnership had become love. The reconciliation with her father came 2 weeks later, arranged by Isabella at a neutral restaurant. Leon Moretti looked older than Arya remembered. The exile of the DeSantis family and the realization of what he'd almost done to his daughter having taken a visible toll. They sat across from each other in a private dining room, the silence heavy with years of hurt. "I'm sorry," Leon said finally. "I've said it before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry for how I treated you, for making you feel less than, for trying to control your future without considering what you wanted." "Well, why?" Arya asked. "Why couldn't you just love me? I was your daughter. I didn't choose how I was born." "Because loving you meant accepting what I'd done to your mother, the promises I broke, the life I denied her." Leon's eyes were wet. "She wanted me to leave the family, build something legitimate with her and you. I chose power over her, and when she died, the guilt almost killed me. Looking at you was looking at my worst mistake." "I wasn't the mistake," Arya said quietly. "Your choices were." "I know," Leon's voice cracked. "And I can't undo the years of damage, but I want to try to be better, to be the father I should have been from the beginning." Arya studied the man across from her, powerful, wealthy, connected, but ultimately alone with his regrets. She could hold on to the anger, let it define their relationship forever. Or she could choose differently. "I can't forget what happened," she said carefully. "I can't pretend the years of neglect and rejection didn't hurt, but I'm willing to try moving forward, slowly, with clear boundaries. I'll take what I can get." Leon's relief was palpable. "And Arya? Matteo Vitale is a good man, better than I gave him credit for. He sees you the way I should have seen you from the beginning." "He does," Arya agreed. "He gave me everything you never did: partnership, respect, protection. He made me powerful instead of invisible. Then I'm glad you chose him." Leon reached across the table, and after a moment's hesitation, Arya took his hand. "I lost years with you because of my pride and guilt. I don't want to lose whatever time we have left." It wasn't perfect reconciliation. It wouldn't erase the damage or heal the wounds overnight, but it was a beginning, a tentative bridge across years of silence. When Arya left the restaurant, Matteo was waiting outside, leaning against his car, with the kind of casual elegance that still made her heart skip. "How did it go?" he asked. "Better than expected. We have a long way to go, but it's a start." Arya slipped into his arms, breathing in the scent of him. "Thank you for giving me the choice to meet him." "You always have choices with me, Arya. That's what partnership means." 6 months later, Arya stood in the ballroom of the same hotel where Matteo had first claimed her, but everything had changed. She wore a crimson gown that had been custom-made, her hair swept up in a style that said powerful instead of pretty, and a diamond necklace that had belonged to Matteo's mother. On her arm was the wedding band that matched Matteo's, and at her side was the man who'd transformed her from invisible to invaluable. The Vitale Foundation's inaugural gala was packed with every influential family in New York. The women from the trafficking rescue, those who'd chosen to stay in the city, sat at a table of honor, now employed by the foundation as counselors and advocates. Isabella was there with Marcus, both having found a cautious peace with their father after months of family therapy. Even Leon attended, keeping a respectful distance but present nonetheless. But the most satisfying moment came when Arya took the stage to announce the foundation's first major initiative, a partnership with federal authorities to identify and shut down human trafficking operations throughout the Northeast. As she spoke about protecting the vulnerable and empowering survivors, she caught sight of several crime family heads shifting uncomfortably in their seats. The message was clear. The Vitale family, under Arya's influence, would no longer tolerate certain operations, and anyone who tried would find themselves facing the same fate as Antonio and Luca DeSantis. When she finished her speech, the applause was thunderous. Matteo met her at the base of the stage, pulling her into a kiss that was possessive and proud and loving all at once. "You were magnificent," he murmured against her lips. We were magnificent, she corrected. This is our work, our foundation, our power being used for something good. Our everything, Matteo agreed, and the words held the weight of truth. Later that night, after the last guest had departed and they'd returned to the penthouse that was finally, truly home, Arya stood at the window overlooking the city. Matteo came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "About how different my life is now. 6 months ago, I was standing alone at a gala, being cornered by married men, tolerated by my father, and invisible to everyone who mattered." She leaned back against his chest. "Now I'm running a foundation, partnering with you on strategy, and powerful in my own right." "You were always powerful," Matteo said. "I just gave you the platform to show it." "You gave me more than that. You gave me choice, agency, a place where I'm not just tolerated. I'm essential." Arya turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd changed everything. "You saved me." "No." Matteo's eyes were fierce and tender. "You saved yourself. I just recognized what everyone else was too blind to see, that you were always a queen. You just needed a kingdom." "I don't need a kingdom," Arya said quietly. "I just need you. You have me. Today, tomorrow, always." Matteo kissed her, and it tasted like promise and forever. My wife, my partner, my queen. Arya Vitale, no longer Moretti, no longer the unwanted daughter, smiled against his lips. She'd gone from invisible to invaluable, from prey to predator, from pawn to power. The girl who'd stood alone beneath crystal chandeliers no longer existed. In her place was a woman who'd learned that queens weren't crowned by bloodline or birthright. They were forged in fire, tempered by survival, and crowned by their own strength. Matteo had claimed her that night on the dance floor. But what he'd truly done was awaken something that had always been there, a woman who didn't need saving, just the opportunity to save herself. Together, they'd built an empire that valued protection over possession, partnership over property, and power used to help rather than harm. And as the city glittered beyond the windows, Arya knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more challenges, more battles, more threats to face. But she would face them all beside the man who'd seen her when she was invisible, the man who'd loved her when she thought she was unlovable, the man who'd given her a crown and then stood beside her, not above her, as equals. 6 months ago, Arya Moretti had been nothing but an inconvenient scandal. Tonight, Arya Vitale ruled as a queen, forged not by bloodline, but by the strength to choose her own destiny. And that made all the difference.